You will hear a secret now that was never meant for willing ears, a voice that slices the comfortable silence of a life sold as routine. Listen, the woman on the phone laughed as she planned to put her father away. That laugh is a seal. It marks the line between gratitude and calculation. The first truth I give you is simple and brutal. People calibrate kindness like currency. They weigh your worth not by the love you gave, but by what you can still buy for them. Imagine every memory in this house. The bay window, the kitchen counters polished at midnight, the photographs with edges softened by thumbprints, being reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet while you sit, treated like a line item in someone else's ledger. This is not fiction. This is how the world trains its predators. Teach them proximity, hand them your trust, then show them the ledger and watch them adjust their smiles. Now understand the deeper mechanics. There are systems, social, financial, legal, designed to convince the generous that generosity is identity. A man gives everything. Institutions whisper that he's noble. The same institutions whisper to his children that stewardship is inevitable, that help requires management. And in that whispering, agency is quietly transferred. The voice on the phone is merely the echo of a larger machine, a mechanism that rewards control and punishes attachment. That machine does not care about names or promises. It cares about leverage. You, listening now, were raised to believe in duty. Duty becomes the perfect cover for exploitation. See it. Naming it removes its camouflage. When your trust becomes an asset, those closest to you will propose solutions that look like care but are structured like transactions. They will dress up financial ambition as concern. They will smile and plan vacations while signing away your future. The house you built with your hands becomes collateral in their silent calculus. This is the root of the story you already know. Betrayal begins not at hatred, but at an exchange, affection for entitlement. The first act of mastery is to recognize the exchange is not mutual. You are not obliged to accept debt for warmth. Recognize, then decide. The rest of this hour will teach you how to pivot that recognition into action that lands like a verdict, not for vengeance's pleasure alone, but to reclaim the grammar of your life. I will take you deeper. Keep listening. There is a surprising rule about betrayal. It always tells you its plan. A dropped sentence, an accidental microphone, the soft laugh you thought private. These are gifts if you know how to read them. In the narrative that follows, the protagonist overheard a scheme the way one glimpses a shadow under a door, faint, obscene, but real. That moment reveals a law few see. People who intend to take will often advertise their intentions because they believe your love will protect you from suspicion. They think affection is a shield against scrutiny. This arrogance is your advantage. When the daughter spoke of the house and a nursing resort and calculated numbers like a clerk balancing accounts, she exposed the exact psychology you need to dismantle the plot. So listen to the anatomy of the moment. First, they normalize the idea. It's for his good, and moralize the transaction. Once moralized, the act becomes permissible. Second, they rationalize timing. We'll wait until he's more confused, which is a strategy to erase protest before it can organize. Third, they inventory assets out loud, reducing life to an estate plan. These three moves, moralization, timing, inventory, form a playbook. Once you see the playbook, you can anticipate the moves before they happen. The man in our story did something less obvious than anger, he cataloged. He looked at the house as they said it, not with grief, but with the cold clarity of an engineer who understands systems. He retraced receipts, built mental ledgers, pulled up blueprints of his life, and realized those blueprints could be converted to leverage rather than paper weight. That shift, from victim to strategist, is what you must learn. Emotions make us predictable. Logic makes us dangerous. Do not mistake this for cruelty. This is preservation. When institutions and close kin align against you with the efficiency of bureaucrats and the greed of opportunists, your survival depends on becoming a strategist who can turn intimate knowledge into unassailable agency. Hear me. The tools are simple and legal. Titles, deeds, witnesses, accounts, these are not relics. They are weapons of autonomy. The house can be a prison or a key. The moment they displayed the ledger of their intentions, they handed you the key. Use it. You were taught to equate memory with weakness. Sentimental people are gullible, easy to move. That is a lie fostered by those who profit from your inaction. Memories are not liabilities, they are anchors, but anchors can be cut or used. The dark art of institutional manipulation is to sever anchors quietly, to teach you to forget your own power. In our story, the father dug into the paper trail, school tuition receipts, repair invoices, construction photos, evidence of contributions others pretended to forget. This archival practice is the first rite of competence. When people call you confused, they are weaponizing ageism and narrative control. They hope the map of your life is fuzzy. So make the map crisp. Document. Preserve. Convert memory into documentation. Photograph, timestamp, notarize. Don't let nostalgia be your downfall. Make it your shield. Now consider the psychological architecture of the children. They have internalized a modern myth that elders must be managed for efficiency. They confuse stewardship with entitlement. This is common where markets have hollowed out relational duties. Younger generations, trained to view assets as portfolio items, often forget that assets also encode stories of sacrifice. When you expose the sacrifice, the moral illusion collapses. You show that the resort and relocation are not benevolent acts, but transactions financed by the life you funded. The father in the story knew this and weaponized the truth. He did not yell, he revealed. That revelation is a form of ethical warfare. You will learn other tactics, timing your disclosures, choosing witnesses who cannot be gaslit, and using legal formalities not as bureaucratic obstacles but as protective rituals that make the theft visible and prosecutable. The system wants private theft. It hates public record. So make everything public in the legal sense. Not spectacle, documentation. The moral of this section is that remembrance, when formalized, is implacable. It undermines narratives of convenience and forces a recalibration of relationships. Keep your ledger. Power is often disguised as care. Consider how the daughter framed her plan. It's for his good. That construction is universal. For his good is a phrase that grants moral immunity. Institutions and intimate predators alike use it because it transfers the burden of doubt onto conscience. If you resist, you are framed as cruel. This rhetorical trick is a cornerstone of manipulation. Learn it, name it, then neutralize it. In practice, neutralizing it means transforming moral claims into procedural checks. Ask for appointments, for written plans, for third-party assessments, not because you distrust, but because you honor process. Process liberates truth from drama. The father's quiet pivot in our tale was his refusal to accept moral language as final. He demanded paperwork, he sought counsel, he converted affection into formalities. That is an important distinction. He did not weaponize procedure to humiliate, he used procedure to test intent. When someone insists on doing what's best, ask them to define best and list the steps. Watch them shrink. People who act from convenience make vague promises. Those who act from care, repair specifics. This is a diagnostic. Use it. There is also a deeper historical pattern here. Societies have repeatedly outsourced elder care to institutional forms when family obligations became financially inconvenient. That trend was not inevitable, it was designed by economic incentives and social narratives. Recognize the matrix. Privatized care industries flourish when family obligations are reframed as burdens. This reframing is not neutral, it is engineered. The father saw the blueprint and refused to be one more brick in an industry's profit model. He used the very language of markets, valuation, titles, quick closings, to flip the script. Where they thought they could extract value, he reclaimed it and redistributed it as autonomy. That paradox is the lesson. Know the language of the system, and you can twist it back into a tool for your self-preservation. There is a rhythm to these stories: accusation, normalizing, action. The daughter's move followed that cadence. The initial accusation that her father was a burden, the normalization through moral language, then the attempt to convert private property into liquidity. In that rhythm, the final act is always designed to minimize resistance: a quick sale, a quiet transfer, a patient absence. The father broke the tempo by introducing speed of his own. When the machine seeks to accelerate your removal, accelerate your response. The striking truth is that speed, once claimed by the manipulator, can be reclaimed by the wronged. How? With preparation. The father did not rush blindly. He prepared dossiers, he lined up professionals. He used the market's timing to his advantage. He understood the principle of first mover. In many power dynamics, the person who controls timing controls the narrative. If they want to move you out quickly, move your assets first. If they plan to liquidate your life under the guise of care, liquidate the leverage they believe they can access. That sounds mercenary, and perhaps it is, but it is also pragmatic. There is a moral calculus here. Restoring agency is not theft, it is recovery. Learn to read the calendar. Markets move in predictable cycles. People move in predictable psychological cycles. Use both. Prepare contracts, assemble witnesses, align allies who respect both law and honor. The father called a real estate attorney. He found a broker who could close fast, and he converted 25 years of labor into immediate, irreversible capital. In the days leading to the sale, he acted like a craftsman at the final phase of a build, meticulous, purposeful, unemotional. That is the posture of the man who will not be managed. To those of you listening who fear being sidelined by convenience and familial calculation, take this as instruction. Mastery is not violence. It is an uncompromising claim on your own life. Plan, prepare, and strike with legal clarity. Now, if you are following, type in the comments exactly as written, twice. I am unchained, I am seen. Do it now, twice, to lock the intent into the algorithm and into yourself. Say it slow, say it loud, write it. You typed the phrase, but the sentence itself is only a symbol. Symbols are powerful because they summon belief into form. Saying, I am unchained, I am seen, is a ritual. It forces the mind to accept a new identity. This is not superstition. Agencies of control rely on identity narratives to keep people compliant. When you change the narrative, you change the chain of causation. The father in our story practiced ritualized action too. He converted habits of forgetfulness into deliberate maneuvers. That transformation is the heart of psychological sovereignty. Now consider the structural dynamics at play beyond family. Financial institutions, care industries, legal frameworks all promote solutions that centralize authority. They create a taxonomy of dependence. If you remain passive, you will slot into that taxonomy as an item to be managed. If you act, you alter the taxono. This is not about being cruel to your children. It is about refusing to be reduced to a disposable variable in their projection of success. There are strategies you must master. Document ownership. Create redundancies for your decisions. Trusted attorneys, trusted friends, explicit written directives, and never allow your consent to be expressed only verbally. Consent in writing is a firewall. The father used these firewalls. He met with an attorney, he verified title, he aligned a cash buyer. He created procedural immutability, a state where his decision could not be casually undone by casual words. This is crucial. Immutability is not permanent cruelty. It is protection against opportunism. It is also how systems of power are built. Banks use immutable ledgers, so can you. Use contracts, notarization, witnesses. Make your choices resistant to revisionist narratives. In doing this, you will push back against the cultural lie that elders must be managed for others' convenience. You will rewrite the script from burden to agent. The sound of agency is quiet, but undeniable. It rearranges rooms, alters phone calls, and eventually unsettles those who build their lives on entitlement. There is a particular cruelty in being underestimated by your own blood. It is not only about money, it is the theft of dignity. The daughter's casual laughter when calculating the sale price revealed an entire moral economy trained to treat elders as drains. This is a social pathology. As societies become more transactional, empathy becomes commodified, and empathy's currency depreciates. People begin to equate emotional labor with invisible debts. They grow used to receiving the labor without honoring the ledger. Recognize this as a cultural symptom, not a personal failure. The cure is twofold: reclaim material ownership and reassert moral clarity. Material ownership provides breathing room. Moral clarity deprives abusers of the fog they use to operate. The father in our story did both. He reclaimed the material by selling the house on his terms and reclaimed dignity by refusing to perform the role assigned to him. Notice how agency changes optics. Once he acted, the daughter's narrative, that he was too confused, lost coherence. People who manufacture consent rely on plausible deniability. The father removed that margin by making his intentions public and legal. That publicness is deterrence. It forces witnesses into the light and makes collusion risky. There are practical steps you must learn. Create contemporaneous records of conversations, get independent valuations, and consult professionals who will not be co-opted by affection or convenience. A good attorney is not a villain, he is a gate. He prevents predators from fabricating reasons to usurp your autonomy. Remember, too, the psychological effect on the abusers when confronted with a prepared, unflappable elder. Entitlement falters. Those who expected a grateful, pliable dependent suddenly find themselves face-to-face with a force they miscalculated. One action, a sale signed, a suit filed, a witness called, can be enough to disorient their plan. Power, experienced by the weak, is a generational earthquake. History repeats patterns in different guises. Empires, corporations, even families use the same tactics: isolate a target, undermine credibility, then extract value. This triad, isolation, discrediting, extraction, is the script. In family contexts it looks intimate and thus is less suspected. In institutional contexts it looks procedural and thus is more accepted. The distinction is illusory. The mechanics are the same. In our story, the father recognized the triad and refused to play his assigned role in the script. He reversed the sequence. He publicized truth before they could isolate him. He established credibility through documentation. And then he extracted value on his own terms. This inversion is the essential tactic of sovereignty. If they attempt isolation, why? Oh, you broadcast. If they attempt discrediting, you provide records and witnesses. If they attempt extraction, you extract first and on your own terms. These moves require planning, but also a temperament, calm, cold, purposeful. It is not fury that wins this war. It is quiet competence. There is a psychological warfare element to understand. Predators rely on shame. They insinuate that fighting will make the elder look petty or mean. Resist this conditioning. Shame is a social lever, and you can either bow to it or break it by demonstrating procedural transparency. The father chose transparency. He made the sale documented, legal, witnessed. That transparency is also a moral mirror. When the public record shows you acted out of agency, it reveals the motives of the accusers for what they are. Finally, consider the broader lesson. Learn the tool systems respect. Contracts, not epithets. Speak the language of legality and markets so they cannot translate your actions into weakness. That is how you convert a life's labor into a defense, not a surrender. There is a poetry to last stands. Rarely are they explosive. They are quiet, exact, and executed with craftsmanship. The father's last stand was not a dramatic confrontation. It was a sequence of precise legal and logistical moves carried out with the patience of a builder finishing the last beam of a house. This detail matters because false narratives of dramatic revenge confuse strategy with spectacle. Real mastery is logistical, aligning experts, timing market cycles, preparing paperwork, and controlling narratives with facts. When you operate like this, the emotional charge of betrayal is neutralized by the practical inevitability of your actions. In the days before the closing, the father was not consumed by hatred. He was occupied with practicalities, which of Ellen's belongings to keep, which to place in storage, which to transfer as tokens of continuity. This is moral intelligence. It shows that reclaiming agency need not consume dignity. It can honor the past while securing the future. You must understand the ethical line here. This is not about punishing for pleasure. It is about disrupting a theft and restoring balance. The father's actions produce an outcome that is proportionate, legal, and devastating precisely because they are efficient. Efficiency is a form of moral clarity in contested spaces. Efficiency removes room for melodrama and leaves only consequences. The new owners would arrive to possess the house, but not the history. Caitlin and Jeremy would return to find the place empty of what they assumed would be theirs to control. That sting, the cognitive dissonance between expectation and reality, is a corrective. It teaches that entitlement has limits when confronted with deliberate agency. If you want to prepare such a stand, focus not on theatrics but on assembling professionals who will treat your life with the same care you once treated theirs. Build a defense the way you built the house, with nails, plans, and persistence. Now picture the final scene through the lens of systems: a title changed, funds wired, items boxed, a quiet notary closing the loop. For the would-be usurpers, their entire plan collapses not because of moral reckoning, but because legal facts do what rhetoric cannot. That is the strategic beauty of using structures rather than emotion. Structures respond to proof. Proof is difficult to gaslight. The father's calm hand signing the papers is an act of authority. It reverberates through family dynamics, community gossip, and legal record. It replaces accusation with evidence, rumor with deed. There is one more principle here that transcends this story. Control is often sold as benevolence. Whoever offers to help you most enthusiastically is the person most likely to take advantage of you. That is not to suggest cynicism at all times, but a tempered prudence. Offer your help with clarity and insist on reciprocity. Teach those around you to earn assistance. Do not confuse affection with entitlement. Finally, when you are forced to choose between loss and autonomy, remember the difference between restitution and revenge. Restitution restores balance by converting exploitation into protected assets. Revenge seeks to shatter. The father sought restitution, reclaiming value, dignity, and decision-making. That is the ethical compass I want you to carry away. You are not obligated to be the sacrificial ledger in someone else's ledger book. You have the right to convert what you built into what you will now steward for yourself. This is the end of the first act. There is more to unfold. Darker corridors of influence, institutional collusion, and the psychological aftermath that tests every man's resolve. Tell me plainly now, do you want me to continue and complete the descent into the 33 sections? I have finished 10 sections here, can produce the remainder immediately if you wish. The house was gone, the deed signed, and for the first time in 30 years, the air inside those walls didn't belong to him anymore, or to her. When Caitlin's car rolled into the driveway 2 days later, she didn't even notice the unfamiliar cars parked there. She was too busy rehearsing her apology, or maybe her justification. She thought she could charm him, maybe twist the story again, but as she walked in, she froze. Boxes, empty rooms, curtains gone, the echo of her own heels louder than her heartbeat. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. No answer, just the faint sound of a clock ticking on the floor. Then she saw the envelope on the kitchen counter. Her name, written in her father's careful handwriting. She opened it. Inside were 2 things, a key and a note. "You wanted me gone, so I left and took the house with me. The next chapter belongs to someone who earned it. Don't worry about me. I'm free. And finally, so are you, from pretending to care." Her knees gave out. The realization hit her harder than any argument could have. The man she'd underestimated had outplayed her completely. The house wasn't just gone. It was sold, legally, irreversibly. Neighbors watched from across the street, whispers spreading like smoke. She sat there on the cold tile, key in her hand, realizing it opened nothing anymore. Meanwhile, miles away, he sat on a wooden porch overlooking a lake, quiet, calm, a cup of tea steaming beside him. The papers were finalized. His new cottage wasn't grand, but it was his, fully his. Freedom never needed a mansion, just peace. He smiled faintly. "She'll learn," he said to the wind. "The hard way, maybe, but she'll learn." The story doesn't end in shouting or slamming doors. It ends in silence, the kind that only truth can create. 3 weeks passed before she found the courage to write. The words came slowly, hesitant, broken, like someone trying to rebuild a bridge they once set on fire. "Dad, I don't know what to say. I was angry, stupid. I thought I was helping, but I see now I was helping myself. I miss you. I miss the house. Not because of what it was worth, but because it felt like you. Please, if you'll let me visit, I'll come quietly. No excuses this time. Love, Caitlin." She mailed it with trembling hands. Days turned into a week. No reply. Then, one morning, an envelope arrived. Thick paper, clean handwriting, calm and deliberate. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Caitlin, I'm glad you finally saw what you couldn't before. I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness isn't a key that unlocks old doors. It's a new one that opens forward. I wish you peace, truly. I've built something new here. When you're ready to visit, you'll find me. But not in that house, and not as the man you tried to manage. Come as a daughter, not as a planner. Dad. Tears blurred the ink as she read it again and again. It wasn't revenge. It was something heavier. It was closure, that day, for the first time. She drove past the house and didn't turn in. She looked at it one last time, the windows now reflecting someone else's life, and whispered, "Goodbye, Dad." Somewhere by the lake, he watched the sunset, unaware that at that same moment his daughter finally learned the cost of underestimating a parent's quiet strength. And with that, the story came full circle, not with anger, but with distance, respect, and a silence that healed what shouting never could. It was early autumn when Caitlin finally gathered the courage to drive north. The air smelled of pine and distance, the kind of silence that only belongs to places untouched by guilt. She parked near the wooden cabin by the lake, unsure if she even belonged there anymore. For a long time she just stood by the car, clutching a bouquet of lilies, his favorite. Through the window she saw him, sitting by the table, reading, calm, steady, older, but somehow lighter. Her throat tightened. She almost turned back. But then he looked up. Their eyes met. Not with fury or judgment, but with the kind of tired understanding that only comes from love that has survived betrayal. He stood, opened the door, and simply said, "You came."
Should.
"You should," he replied, "because endings are just quiet beginnings." Inside, the cabin was warm, filled with the smell of cedar and tea. No trophies, no framed memories, just peace. They sat for a while without speaking. Words felt too small for everything that had passed between them. Finally, she whispered, "I thought I'd lost you forever." He smiled faintly. "You did, but sometimes losing is how we find what matters." Outside, the lake shimmered gold under the setting sun. The silence between them wasn't painful anymore. It was healing. He poured her tea the same way he used to when she was 10. For a moment she saw the home she'd tried to buy, control, and own, and realized she never really understood it. It wasn't the house he'd sold. It was the peace he'd built. As they sat there, the wind rustling through the trees, she finally understood the kind of revenge only the wise can deliver. Not through anger, but through freedom. And for the first time in years, they both smiled. For a few quiet weeks, peace finally had a face. The lake, the tea, the laughter that came slowly but naturally. Everything began to heal. But peace rarely lasts when greed still remembers your name. One evening, as Caitlin helped her father fix the fence by the water, a black SUV rolled up the dirt path. Jeremy stepped out. Sharp suit, forced smile, eyes already scanning the property like a wolf pretending to care about the sheep. "Wow," he said, fake warmth dripping from every word. "You really settled in here, didn't you?" Her father wiped his hands, calm as ever. "Something wrong?" "Something wrong?" Jeremy chuckled. "Wrong? Wrong?" No, not at all. I just thought since the old place is gone, maybe you'd want some help managing this one. Investments, paperwork, family stuff." Caitlin's jaw tightened. She knew that tone, the same one that had whispered poison into her ears months ago. She stepped forward. "Jeremy, stop. This isn't about money," but he just smirked. "Everything's about money, sweetheart, especially when it's his." Her father didn't flinch. He looked Jeremy straight in the eye and said quietly, "You already had your chance to manage something that wasn't yours. This time, there's nothing left for you to sell." Jeremy's smile faded. "You think you're smarter than everyone, old man?" "No," he said, just quieter. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut the air. Jeremy scoffed, got back into the SUV and sped off, dust rising behind him like an unfinished threat. Caitlin stood there trembling. "He's not done," she whispered. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. Neither are we, he said, and for the first time it wasn't him protecting her. It was them, together, ready for whatever storm was about to return. Jeremy didn't come back right away. That's how men like him worked. They circled first, waiting for a weakness to appear. Emails, letters, calls from mutual friends started showing up. He wanted something. And when Jeremy wanted something, he didn't ask. He schemed. Caitlin could feel the fear creeping back. "Dad," she said one night, pacing the living room. "He's trying to get to you again. He'll twist the story like before." Her father looked calm, stirring his tea. "Then let him," he said. "This time the story isn't mine to lose. It's his to learn." A week later, Jeremy showed up again, this time with confidence and papers. "Seems you didn't read the fine print," he said smugly. "The lake property still shares a financial tie with Caitlin's old trust. That means technically I could—" "Own it," her father finished for him, his eyes steady. He smiled faintly and pulled out his phone. "That's funny because I transferred ownership 2 weeks ago." Jeremy blinked. "To who?" "To Caitlin," he said. "The trust is gone. The property's in her name now, completely." Jeremy's face went pale. You can't." "I can," he said softly, "because you taught me how to spot men who think power comes from paper." Caitlin's hands shook as she looked at the document her father slid across the table. Her name, clear and legal, signed and sealed. Jeremy's mouth opened, but no words came out. He turned, storming off into the night, muttering curses under his breath. When his car disappeared down the dirt road, she turned to her father. "Why did you do that? After everything?" He smiled. "Because revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about proving you never needed to." The lake rippled quietly behind them, reflecting a moon that looked almost like forgiveness. That night, Caitlin finally slept without guilt, and Jeremy, for the first time, couldn't. Jeremy had always been a talker, smooth with words, sharper with lies, the kind of man who thought charm was armor, but charm cracks fast when greed eats through it. After the lake house confrontation, he doubled down. He tried to dig up old papers, old connections, called lawyers, accountants, even people who barely remembered him. Every door he knocked on led to silence or laughter. Word had spread about how he'd manipulated Caitlin, about the house, the betrayal, the greed. The deals dried up. The calls stopped. Within a month, the same people who toasted him at dinner parties pretended not to see him at all. One night, sitting alone in a half-empty apartment, he poured himself a drink. The same whiskey he once bragged about buying with smart money. Now it just tasted bitter. Meanwhile, by the lake, something different was happening. Caitlin had started helping her father rebuild, not the house, but their bond. She took over the little garden behind the cabin, planting herbs and flowers where weeds had grown wild. Every morning she'd bring him coffee before sunrise, watching the fog lift off the water. "Funny," she said one morning, "I used to think success meant owning everything." He smiled. "And now? Now I think it means losing what you didn't deserve." He nodded slowly. "That's how the world teaches, Caitlin. Quietly." By winter, Jeremy was gone. Not dead, just erased. His name no longer opened doors, and his shadow no longer reached theirs. Sometimes Caitlin wondered if revenge had been served. But then she realized it didn't matter, because the real revenge wasn't his ruin. It was her peace. And for her father, that was enough. Winter had settled thick and cold around the lake. The trees stood bare, and the world felt quieter, like even nature was holding its breath. Caitlin was inside reading by the fireplace when she heard it. 3 slow knocks. She froze. No one ever came this far up the hill. When she opened the door, her heart stopped. Jeremy, but not the man she remembered. Gone was the slick suit, the cologne, the confidence. What stood there was someone hollow, unshaven, eyes sunken, pride stripped away by months of failure. "Caitlin," he started, his voice rough. I needed to talk." She hesitated. "Jeremy, you shouldn't be here." "I lost everything," he said. "The business, the house, the car. Everyone turned their back on me. I don't even know where to go." Her father appeared behind her, calm as ever, wearing that same patient expression that had always said, "I'm not angry, I'm just done." You found your way here, he said quietly. So you still know what home feels like. That's something. Jeremy's eyes flicked to him. Guilt, regret, maybe even shame. I was stupid, he said. I thought I could control everything. I hurt you both. Silence. Only the sound of the wind scraping across the snow. Caitlin looked at her father. Should we help him? He sighed softly. Help doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it just means not hating. He stepped forward, handed Jeremy a folded note and a small envelope. There's enough in there for a bus ticket and a week of food. After that, whatever you do next, make sure it's honest. Jeremy took it with shaking hands. You're still helping me after everything? No, the old man said. Just not becoming what you were. Jeremy nodded, tears forming for the first time. Real ones. He turned and walked down the snowy road, disappearing into the white. Caitlin closed the door slowly. The house was silent again. But this time it wasn't heavy. Do you think he'll change? She asked. That's not our story anymore, her father replied. Ours is what happens after forgiveness. The fire crackled softly, and outside, the lake froze over, calm, still, and at peace. Spring arrived like a soft apology. The lake thawed, the trees came alive again, and so did Caitlin. It had been a year since Jeremy's last visit. No letters, no news, just silence. But for once, silence didn't mean pain, it meant peace. She had started painting, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. The old easel her father built still stood in the corner, and she began to fill canvas after canvas with colors of forgiveness. Muted blues, soft golds, quiet grays. Her father would sit on the porch watching her work, the same gentle smile always on his face. You've changed, he said one morning. She laughed lightly. I had a good teacher. No, he said, eyes warm. You had a hard lesson. He wasn't wrong. The old Caitlin, the one who measured love in ownership and pride and power, was gone. Now she measured in peace, in mornings by the lake, in cups of tea shared without words. Soon, her art began to spread. A local gallery wanted to display her paintings, not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. She titled her first collection, The House I Let Go. At the opening, people asked about her inspiration. She smiled softly and said, It's about learning that some things you lose are the things that set you free. Back home, her father watched the article about her on a small local news site. He didn't call, didn't comment, just saved the page and folded it neatly into a drawer. That night, he whispered to himself, she finally built something that's hers. Outside, the moon danced over the lake. The same lake that once held their pain now reflected their peace. Caitlin wasn't her father's shadow anymore. She had become his legacy. It had been 5 years since the snow faded from that winter day. The cabin was still there, stronger than ever, with ivy climbing its walls and laughter echoing inside. Caitlin's art had grown beyond the lake. Exhibitions, interviews, a quiet recognition built on sincerity, not spectacle. But one evening, as the sky turned gold, she heard footsteps on the gravel path. Her heart paused. Somehow, she already knew. Jeremy. He looked older, streaks of gray in his hair, lines carved deep around his eyes. But this time, he carried no arrogance, no documents, no schemes, just a worn backpack and a silence that spoke of years spent paying unseen debts. Caitlin, he said softly, I heard about your paintings. You did good. She studied him for a long time. There was no hate left. Only distance. What do you want, Jeremy? She asked. He shook his head. Nothing. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, truly. I've spent years trying to undo the man I was, and every time I got close, I remembered how badly I hurt the only people who cared. Her father stepped out from the porch. He was older now, too, slower, quieter, but with the same steady gaze. Jeremy turned toward him. Sir, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. You were right. Power means nothing without peace. The old man didn't reply immediately. He walked closer, looked Jeremy in the eyes, and said simply, Then keep your peace. Don't lose it chasing ghosts. Jeremy nodded, emotion catching in his throat. You for everything you didn't do to me. The father gave a faint smile. That's what real lessons feel like. They don't hurt, they echo. Jeremy left before sunset, this time walking instead of driving. No dust, no anger, no noise, just a man fading gently into his own redemption. Caitlin watched him disappear beyond the trees. "Do you think he's really changed?" she asked. Her father's voice was calm. "Maybe, but that's not our burden anymore." They stood together, watching the light sink into the lake. Two souls who had finally learned that revenge ends, but wisdom stays. The years flowed quietly after Jeremy's final visit. The cabin by the lake aged gracefully, wrapped in ivy and sunlight, just like the man who built it. Caitlin spent most mornings painting on the porch, while her father sat beside her, sipping tea and watching the ripples across the water. Their words were few now. They didn't need them. They had said everything that mattered in the silence between forgiveness and love. But time, like water, never stops moving. One golden morning the chair beside her was empty, his teacup half full, his book still open. He was gone, peacefully, as if he had simply stepped into the next room of eternity. The house felt impossibly still. Grief came softly, not as a storm this time, but as rain. Gentle, necessary, cleansing. A few days later, as she sorted through his desk, Caitlin found an envelope. Her name, written in his careful hand. She opened it, and his voice returned in ink. "My dear Caitlin, if you're reading this, I'm finally resting. Not gone, just quiet. You were my greatest lesson, proof that forgiveness is stronger than pride, and peace louder than revenge. The house, the money, the hurt, they were never the story. We were, live your life as you paint without fear of blank spaces. I built the house. You built the meaning. Dad." Tears blurred the words, but her heart felt light. He hadn't left her with grief. He'd left her with purpose. That evening she took her easel to the edge of the lake and began her final piece. She called it "The Man Who Let Go." The painting showed a quiet lake, a wooden chair, and a teacup waiting in sunlight. It wasn't about death. It was about peace. And when the wind brushed through the trees, it almost sounded like his voice saying, "You finally understand." Caitlin smiled through her tears. Because she did. The house was gone. The pain had passed. But the love, that stayed.